Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. The ATP Australian Open semi-finals have been set for 2023. It's Novak Djokovic versus Tommy Paul and Stefanos Tsitsipas versus Khachanov. We're going to do a shorter breakdown than we did for our live stream preview and prediction video, where there's a lot of questions being answered, of course, and more of a flowing conversation. This is going to be a more analytical breakdown, give you guys a little bit of insight into how the matches might play out, and also ultimately give you guys my prediction as well, and also some interesting insights as well. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button and do subscribe if you are new. Also, do leave a rating or review if you are listening on a podcast platform. The big question is, can anyone stop Novak Djokovic? And that's what we're going to really be talking about today. And Tommy Paul is the person who's going to try his best to stop him in his tracks. And if not, then he'll be either Tsitsipas or Khachanov who will have that task next, and that will be the final hurdle before Djokovic would end up then winning his 10th Australian Open title. So he's only got 2 more rounds to go, and he's never lost a semi-final or a final at the Australian Open. So whenever he's made the semi-finals at the Australian Open tournament, he's always gone on to win it. So that's 9 semis, 9 finals, 18 wins. Well, Tommy Paul's the one that stands in his way. But before we get into the specific matchups, I have some interesting stats to share. And again, it's from our friends at Tennis Viz, who have done some fantastic stats for the ATP Tour. And they continue to provide these great insights. So I'm going to actually zoom in because I think it's a lot easier. And we don't need to see people's faces, do we? Not really. We just need to see the stats. So this is a serve and return shot quality 52-week average from Tennis Insights. It is on Instagram as well. It's readily available on their Instagram page. It's called Tennis Insights, if I'm not mistaken. It's recognized by the ATP. It's powered by Tennis Viz. So a lot of you might have seen it on the ATP finals when they had ratings for example, return serve, forehand, backhand out of 10. So it's a metric measuring how potent that shot was being. They also had in attack, so how much or what percentage of points were these players on the front foot and attacking, and also a steal percentage. So when they are on the back foot and not expected to win that point, how many times as a percentage do they end up actually ultimately turning it around and winning it? So this is the serve and return. It's like a little chart, and you can see here, so on the left is return quality, so on your y-axis, and if you're a maths nerd, and then you might like that. Return quality is the y-axis, serve quality the x-axis. So the tour average is here, it's this black dot here, and that's around the 6.5 to 7.5. So 6.5 return quality and 7.5 serve quality. So let's talk about Tommy Paul first. So Tommy Paul is below the tour average for serve quality. His serve quality is at 7.4. Now, interestingly, from what I've seen, he's actually got, I think he's within the top 5, top 6 for ace count. But aces don't always tell the whole story. It's about how consistent you're being and how you're backing up your first serve. Are you hitting your spots consistently as well? So he's 0.1 below the tour average, but his return quality is at 6.8, which is 0.3 above the tour average. So that's where Tommy Paul's at. Then if we move along the x-axis, we come to Khachanov. Khachanov's serve quality is at 7.8, so 0.3 above the tour average, and his return quality is at 7, which is 0.5 above the tour average. So he's tracking in a pretty decent return, I think, no pun intended, on his serve and return stats. So he's in a good, healthy, position in terms of how much more quality he ends up being able to produce on the serve and return in relation to the tour average. Then if we shift across a bit more, we've got Djokovic. And now Djokovic has an 8.1 serve quality, which is very good, of course. That's incredibly good. That's, talking about Khachanov is at 7.8. So that's in fact, I said, sorry, yeah, 7.8. And we're talking about Djokovic at 8.1, which is 0.6 above the tour average. And his return is at 7.3, which is 0.8 above the tour average. So he's all the way up here. Now, obviously, your ideal is to be right in this corner. Djokovic is quite close to that, isn't he? He's only 0.1 below the top end of serve quality and 0.1 below the top end of return quality. So he's sitting in a really, really nice place, Djokovic. Then if we move across one more time, we can see Stefanos Tsitsipas. Now, he has the best serve quality at 8.2. He's leading the pack there. But his return quality is only 6.8, which is the same as Tommy Paul. It's still above tour average by 0.3, but not ideal. And for serve, he's at 0.7 advantage to the tour average. So he's very, very serve dependent is all that stats telling you. Now, this is over a 52-week average. Isn't taking into account just the Australian Open, of course. And I imagine the stats would look slightly different if it was just for the Australian Open. Then, if we look at some of the other stats then, so what we're going to do is we're going to, let's have a look at the next one. So we've got forehand and backhand shot quality. This is very interesting to me because I'm sure a lot of people have preconceptions about certain players, for example, Tsitsipas, and say maybe Djokovic as well. So where do these guys land? Okay, so the tour average is 7.2 forehand quality and 7 backhand quality. All right, okay. So as expected, the forehand quality is better than the backhand quality. For Tommy Paul, he's at 7.6 forehand quality and 7.2 backhand. So he's, 0.6 above the average for forehands and 0.2 above the tour average on backhand. For Khachanov, his forehand isn't quite as good as Tommy Paul's. It's at 7.5, but backhand quality is at 7.5, so equal. And that's interesting. You don't have many players that have equally as good a backhand as forehand. He seems to be in that bracket. For Tsitsipas, he's all the way to the right. Forehand quality of 8.3. That's 1.3 above the tour average. That's really, really high. And then 7.3 on backhand quality. So still above the tour average. He's above Tommy Paul, but not above Karen Khachanov. And then we've got Novak Djokovic at 8.8 forehand quality and then 7.9 backhand quality. So he's at the top end of both scales. I mean, that's phenomenal. It's 0.9 above the backhand quality average, and he's at 1.8 higher than the tour average on forehand quality. So that's ridiculously good. Then if we look at the in attack and baseline battle, this is where it gets quite interesting, actually, because in attack's along the x-axis, baseline battle is along the y-axis. Khachanov's at 22% in attack and 49% baseline battle, so he's actually really poor in this regard. The tour average is 22%. He's the same as the tour average for in attack, and he's actually below the baseline battle percentage by 1%. Tommy Paul is above it. He's at 23% in attack, and also he's at 52% baseline battle. So he is 1% above the in attack average and 2% above the baseline battle percentage. For Tsitsipas, he's pretty poor when it comes to baseline battles. He's only at 50%. I guess that might also be to do with the fact that he likes to transition to the net. So I don't know if that's factored in as much. So he's at 50%, which is in line with the tour average, but 25% in attack. And then we've got Djokovic, 25% in attack, which is really good. He's actually equal with Tsitsipas, but 58% baseline battle. What I would say is this isn't particularly surprising, these stats so far. It's just intriguing to see whether it is in line with what we think as observers. Then we've got conversion and still 52-week average. So Khachanov is at 66%. That's the conversion score. So that's converting your break points. Steal score is stealing points when you're not expected to win or you're on the back foot and then you end up turning it around. He's at 29% steal score, which is way below the tour average. And he's at 66% conversion score, which is again below the average. So he's below the average on both. The tour average is 32% steal score, 68% conversion score. Paul is on the average scale for steal at 32%, but 1% in front of conversion score at 69%. Tsitsipas at 32% for steal, 71% for conversion. So he's quite a bit in front there, 3% in front on conversion. And for steal, he's actually in line with the average. Djokovic is in front at 73%, so that's 5% above the tour average for conversion. And he's also at 35% for steal score, which is 3% above the average. So this to me is just reinforcing that Djokovic is going to be the player to beat at this Australian Open because the stats back it up and also the eye test backs it up. It's just not looking particularly good for the rest of the field. In terms of the two matchups, I'll quickly talk about those and then give you guys my predictions. So we can talk about Tsitsipas and Khachanov first. I said it in my live preview. I think Khachanov, will want to try and engage in the backhand-to-backhand rallies with Steph because he'll probably back himself in that. Steph needs to be quite clever and be on the front foot. If he doesn't let Khachanov settle down, he will end up making mistakes. He will get frustrated. Also, I think Steph needs to approach the net as he normally does. I think he needs to transition well. The approach shots need to be good because Karen Khachanov is pretty good at being able to pass people at the net when he's not on at full strength at full stretch even, or if the approach shot is not deep enough into court. So something for Tsitsipas to bear in mind. I think if he serves well, then it's going to be tough for Khachanov. But similarly, if Khachanov serves well, it'll be tough for Steph because Steph, I think he needs to utilize the block backhand and get into those rallies, try and dictate with the forehand. Both players, like Khachanov, will try and dictate with the in-to-in forehand, Tsitsipas with the in-to-out forehand. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of rallies that end up being quite physical, grueling points. But what Tsitsipas will want to do and will try to do, I imagine, is try and shorten those points by serve volley, by serve forehand, 1+ plays where he's really either hitting a winner off the 1+ shot or it's a shot that gets him on the attack straight away, right? So, and that's reflected in his in-attack percentage score. So for Steph, it's about sticking to his game. I think in the backhand-to-backhand rallies, he needs to maybe do what he's done in the past, which is be brave and go line first. Whether he has the ability to do that on the backhand, I don't know, in terms of being able to do it consistently and get it deep enough into court. But he then needs to think about a plan B if that doesn't work, and that means the slice and utilizing that at times to try and disrupt the rhythm of Karen Khachanov as well. He's polished his drop shot pretty well. That's looking quite good, and I like his net game. For Khachanov, it's about being as solid as possible, trying to induce errors from Tsitsipas, opening up the court as much as possible, using angles, serving like an absolute beast as he has done so throughout this whole tournament, and then trying to return that Tsitsipas serve, where both these guys will be trying their best to return the opponent's serve. But I imagine if both are fully fit and are, okay, strength-wise as well, then and only then will we see who is potentially able to edge this contest. But for Tsitsipas, he holds the cards for me. I think he's the one who will be able to dictate proceedings. I don't see Khachanov, being the one to really dictate consistently. I think he's going to want to be in his comfortable zone. I feel like that's in between defense and attack, neutral, and just, chipping away at times. He will go relatively big in some points, but generally, he's pretty happy to grind from the back of the court and get those much needed victories. In terms of the seedings, by the way, ATP number 20 is the live rankings, I think, for Khachanov. ATP number 4 for Tsitsipas. So Tsitsipas has an expectation, of course, to win it, especially given he made his first Grand Slam final now a year and a half ago, lost to Novak after being 2 sets to love up. I think he would love the opportunity to at least play in a final, whether it's against Djokovic or Tommy Paul. So I have a feeling he looks a bit more dominant than he's done in previous matches, previous tournaments. But the Australian Open is one that he just ends up really getting up for, and Grand Slams in general for Khachanov. So it's great to see him in back-to-back semi-finals of Grand Slams, and I'm sure he's really enjoying it too. For the other matchup, before I go on to the other matchup, I think Steph will win in 4 sets. I think he'll have a blip at some point in the set where he's either coming in behind the long balls or he's trying to go for too much with a forehand or backhand, too close to the lines. He picked it up in the second set, and Khachanov couldn't pick up the pieces at all. He just, it was crazy to see, but unfortunately, just didn't really cash in on that opportunity. For predictions, I'll go 4 sets, Tsitsipas. What I would say is, for Djokovic and Tommy Paul, this is an intriguing one. Now, I say that because I think personally that Djokovic, it's all in his hands. It's all in his hands. I think for me, it's a difficult one because it's a similar situation to the Rublev match. The only thing going for Tommy Paul is the fact that he's never played Djokovic before. So Djokovic might take a little bit of time to warm into the match and also understand exactly the way that Tommy Paul plays to then be able to download that information and execute a game plan to a T. So I think for me, Novak Djokovic will win this pretty comfortably, if I'm being honest with you. I think Tommy Paul will be a little bit overruled by the occasion as well. My gut feeling tells me Djokovic is going to cruise through this. I think Tommy Paul might win the first set, given that, as I said, they haven't played before. I don't see how Tommy's serve or return or all-round game troubles Djokovic. I'm just being honest. I think at this stage, I know he troubled Nadal, but Nadal on indoors or on hard court is a different proposition to Djokovic on hard courts or indoor. So, Djokovic is going to serve really well. It's going to be hard for Tommy Paul to get inroads onto that Djokovic serve. His hamstring looks fine after playing against Alex de Minaur, against playing against against playing against Rublev recently. He's moving well. The forehand is devastating. We saw, how good his forehand is in terms of the inside score, his serve as well, his return, his backhand. Everything's just looking on point. And he's also being able to dictate and be attacking in those points and win points with calculated aggression. So he's able to also revert back to type and go, defensive mode and try and get balls back into play and survive and try and turn them and then steal points, like this stat clearly points out, 35%. So look, he is a phenomenal player. It's his favorite surface on his favorite stadium, or in his favorite stadium at his favorite tournament. I think Djokovic in 4 sets. I think Tommy Paul, if he were to win, I think he needs to win the first set for 1, and then also he has to be really, really on point with his tactics and make it really uncomfortable for Djokovic with slices, with angles, with big serving, hitting his spots, with very good, I think very good anticipation as well on the returns, and trying to hit the ball deep into corners and hope Djokovic then breaks down and like that, or he gets an open court then to utilize. So, yeah, it's easier said than done. Djokovic, I just think, is just too good. There's too many different components to his game right now, especially on this surface. So, Djokovic in 4. In terms of anything else, nothing from me, guys. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Also, leave a comment about any of my predictions, any of the insights as well, and we'll get to those questions, no problem. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you in the next video.